Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back. Today I want to share with you guys a review of the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge. A lot of people have compared this to the ever popular Beauty Blender, which I must admit I don't own that. I never have. I've never tried it. So I can't give you a comparison to that, but I've heard many people compare this to the Beauty Blender and say that it's just as good, if not better, than the Beauty Blender. Now, this only costs around $6, depending on where you buy it, and the Beauty Blender is about $20. So you do the math. This is a lot cheaper. So I kind of want to do a little comparison to my Real Techniques Expert Face Brush. I've been using this for a long time to apply my foundation every day, and this has always just been my go-to foundation brush for the past year and a half or so. I've had this sponge for probably about 3 months now, and I've been using it kind of on and off, so I feel like I've gotten a pretty good understanding of how it works and how I feel about it. And the foundation that I'm referencing is the Flower Beauty About Face foundation. This is the only foundation I own right now, so it's the only one I can really test it out with. This is the one that I've been using for the past several months now, so I can definitely tell you how it works with this. And I'd say, just for a little bit of background, this foundation is kind of a light to medium coverage, and it's more of like a dewy finish than some other foundations that I've tried. So just to give you a little idea of what I'm working with here, but honestly, I think that this sponge would work well with a lot of different types of foundations. So I have a little demo for you, and in the demo, I'm going to be comparing the application of foundation with the sponge on the right side of my face and the brush on the left side. So let's just go ahead and get into the demo. So I'm starting out on the right side of my face, or the left side for you guys, and I'm using my sponge here. I've already dampened it, which I do that every time. I just wet it and then squeeze all the water out and kind of pat it dry with a towel to make sure all the excess water is gone. I'm just kind of going over this side of my face using dabbing motions rather than swiping motions. I find that gives me the best coverage, and I'm really happy with the way this works. I feel like it just gives me a very natural finish. The foundation just kind of sinks into my skin without me losing any of the coverage, and it kind of just looks like my real skin. So I am very happy with this side of my face. So now I'm on the left side of my face, or your right side, and I'm using my Real Techniques Expert Face Brush. Right off the bat, I was noticing that it was looking very streaky, and I just kind of had to keep going over it. I had to work extra hard on this side, I felt like, to get it to blend in, and unlike the other side with the sponge, it wasn't looking quite as natural as I would have wanted it to. It kind of just looked like it was sitting on top of my skin and not soaking in and looking like my real skin. So that was kind of frustrating. And I just had to work really hard on this side. So again, I'm just going back over the entire left side of my face to kind of just even the whole thing out. I just wasn't super satisfied with the way it was looking compared to the other side. I just felt like it didn't look like it was completely blended in. I also want to show you guys the application of my under eye concealer with this sponge. I'm going to be using the sponge on my right under eye and just my finger on the left. And the concealer that I'm using is the Wet n Wild Come Correct Celebrity Concealer in Fair. This also is the only concealer I own right now. I'm just trying to use things up before I start hoarding them, if you know what I mean. So, but just to give you a little background on this concealer, if you've never tried it, it's very thick, very emollient. It does have, I would say, pretty good coverage. It's actually not my favorite concealer. It's very thick, so definitely a different texture than the foundation, so this should give you a little bit more of an idea. So I'm starting again on my right side with the sponge, just patting it in. It's blending in super quickly here. It really doesn't take much time at all, and I feel like the sponge doesn't take away much of the coverage. It really just makes it look natural. And then on my left side, I'm using my finger. I don't really have any huge problems with using my finger. Of course, unlike using a brush, I don't have any streaks coming from the bristles or anything like that because it's my finger. But it just does take quite a bit more time than the other side where I used the sponge, because I'm just kind of having to pat it in more and try to get it to look more blended. So I definitely prefer the sponge for concealer too. And then I actually went back in with the sponge to kind of finish it off because I just liked that much better. So overall, I'm really, really pleased with the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge. I feel like it gives me a much more natural looking finish with my foundation and my concealer than the brush and my fingers do for each of those. And on top of that, it's much quicker. With the brush, I actually never realized how difficult it was to apply foundation with this brush, and I've loved this brush for a long time. It's really soft, it's dense, it's a great quality brush. I mean, it's Real Techniques. You guys probably know Real Techniques. They're not expensive, but they make excellent brushes. So I've always loved this brush for foundation, and it wasn't until I compared it to the sponge that I realized how much better the sponge is. With the brush, I had a lot of streaking, and I had to like really fuss with that a lot. And as I was doing the left side of my face, I really wanted to use the sponge. I was like, oh, I just wish I could blend it out with the sponge because it would be so much easier. So for foundation, I really, really prefer the sponge. Like, it's the winner. And then for concealer, I kind of feel the same way. It's really quick at, you just kind of dab over it, and it's blended in. It almost just like becomes one with my skin, the concealer. And I have no trouble with it looking cakey or streaky or dry or anything. This just kind of helps it melt right into the skin and blend in perfectly. With my finger, I didn't really have trouble using my finger as much as I had trouble using the brush with the foundation. I definitely have to say that I prefer the sponge for the concealer just because I did feel like I had to work a little bit harder with my finger to get it to blend in and really sink into my skin. So the bottom line is I really, really love my Real Techniques sponge. I'm so glad I started using this. So some of the pros of this sponge are it's only $6 compared to a $20 beauty blender. I don't have to deal with any kind of streaking on my face that I might get out of a brush. And it really gives me a natural looking finish, and not to mention it's really quick to use once I have it wet. Now, getting into some of the cons, you do have to wet it, so that can be a little annoying. If you don't have access to water when you're applying your makeup, then, I wouldn't recommend using this. So that's kind of annoying. You actually have to get up and go to the sink and squeeze all the water out and do all that stuff, so that can take a little bit of time, but once you've done that, it's super quick at just blending it all into your skin really quickly. So kind of just a trade-off there. Another problem that I've noticed with this is I just don't know where to store it. Like, I don't know the most sanitary way to store this. If you guys have any tips, let me know, but I've just been kind of setting it on top of my makeup drawers and letting it dry that way. And another con is that you probably do need to replace this more than you would replace a brush, depending on how often you use it. But I'm thinking if you use it every day, you may need to replace it every maybe 2 months or so. And you also, if you keep up with cleaning it, that'll help a lot with how often you need to replace it. But overall, I love the sponge. I prefer it over my brush, and I'm curious to see how it works with other products. So if you've ever tried this sponge or any other beauty blender type sponges, let me know what your thoughts were. I really appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.